Say? You're sitting on my seat!
Oh, I think there's been a mistake.
Black billionaire girl's seat stolen by white passenger. What happens seconds later shocks the airline. A young black woman stands frozen in the aisle of a first-class cabin. Her boarding pass trembles slightly in her hand. Seat 2A. That's what it says. Clear as day. But there's a problem. A white passenger is already sitting there. Comfortable. Settled. And he has no intention of moving. She clears her throat politely. "Excuse me, sir. I think you're in my seat." The man doesn't even look up from his phone. "I don't think so, sweetheart. This is 2A. I upgraded." The flight attendant appears, all practice smiles and efficient energy. But when she sees the situation, something shifts in her expression. She looks at the young woman, then at the man, then back at her. And just like that, without a single word being spoken, a decision has already been made. "Miss, can I see your boarding pass?" The young woman hands it over immediately. She's traveled this route before. She knows the drill. Her boarding pass is scanned into the system. Premium elite status. Paid in full months ago. But the flight attendant barely glances at it. "There must be some mistake," the attendant says, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "This seat costs quite a lot of money." Let me pause right here. Because what just happened? A passenger presented valid documentation. And the first response wasn't to verify it. It was to question whether she could afford to be there. Do you see it? The assumption. The immediate, unconscious bias that decided this young black woman, this 18-year-old, must be the one who's wrong. The man in the seat leans back, smirking now. "Yeah, there's definitely been a mix-up. Maybe you're supposed to be in economy." The young woman's voice stays steady, but you can hear the crack forming underneath. "No, sir. This is my seat. I'm traveling alone, and my family booked this months ago." The flight attendant's expression hardens. "Miss, if you don't cooperate, I'm going to have to call security. We can't delay this flight because of a seating error. I'm sure we can find you another seat." Another seat. Not her seat. Another one. As if her ticket, her reservation, her family's money, none of it matters. Because in that moment, in that cabin, she's not seen as a paying passenger. She's seen as a problem to be solved. An inconvenience to be moved. Other passengers start watching now. Some look uncomfortable. Most look away. No one says a word. And here's where this story gets interesting. Because what no one on that plane knew, not the flight attendant, not the passenger, not the captain, was who this young woman actually was. They didn't know her last name. They didn't know her family. They didn't know that every second of this humiliation was being documented. Recorded. Time-stamped. And they definitely didn't know that what happened next would cost the airline millions of dollars, trigger a federal investigation, and become one of the most viral moments of corporate accountability the internet had ever seen. But let's back up. Because to understand how this moment exploded, you need to know who this young woman is. Her name is Lauren. She's 18 years old. She's the only child of Marcus and Diane Thompson, a name you might not recognize unless you follow tech billionaires who prefer to stay out of the headlines. Marcus Thompson founded a software security company that's now valued at over $8 billion. The family lives modestly by billionaire standards. They don't flaunt their wealth. They don't post it on social media. And they've raised Lauren to be independent, grounded, and confident. This wasn't Lauren's first time flying alone. She'd done it dozens of times. Her parents traveled frequently for business, and they'd enrolled her in the airline's elite program, a premium service for wealthy families. The airline knew who she was. Or at least, their system did. Her account was flagged as VIP. Her tickets were always first class. Her seat for this flight was purchased 3 months in advance using the family's corporate account. Everything was documented. Everything was paid for. Everything was legitimate. But none of that mattered. Because when Lauren walked onto that plane, the people working it didn't see a VIP. They saw a young black woman. And their bias told them she didn't belong. Now, here's the thing her parents had always taught her: documentation is everything. Receipts. Confirmations. Records. Keep it all. So Lauren had her boarding pass, her confirmation email, and her phone. And while she stood there being humiliated, her phone was recording everything. The flight attendant's tone grows sharper. "Miss, I need you to step aside now. We're boarding other passengers." "But this is my seat," Lauren says again, quieter now. "I understand you're confused, but we need to resolve this quickly. Please move to the back of the plane while we sort this out." The white passenger is fully relaxed now, scrolling through his phone like this is the most normal thing in the world. He's already won, and he knows it. Lauren's eyes start to sting. She's trying so hard not to cry. Because she knows, somewhere deep inside, that if she cries, it'll be used against her. She'll be emotional, difficult, uncooperative. So she stands there, in the aisle, holding her boarding pass, while everyone watches. And that's when someone spoke up. A man seated 3 rows back in first class. Measured. He doesn't raise his voice. He simply says, "Excuse me. Before we escalate this, can someone actually scan her boarding pass into the system properly?" The flight attendant turns to him, annoyed. "Sir, this doesn't concern you. It does if this flight is being delayed because of an assumption instead of a verification." The attendant bristles. "We're handling it." "You're not handling it," the man says, his tone still even. "You're removing a passenger from her assigned seat without confirming the facts. Scan the pass." There's a long pause. The kind that stretches out and makes everyone uncomfortable. Finally, the attendant's supervisor is called. And for the first time since this started, someone actually does their job. They scan Lauren's boarding pass. Properly this time. Into the system. And the screen lights up. Seat 2A. Confirmed. Paid in full. Elite status. Corporate account. The supervisor's face goes pale. If you're already hooked by this story, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next will leave you speechless. And I want to ask you, have you ever been in a situation where someone assumed you didn't belong somewhere just because of how you looked? Drop your answer in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Let's rewind just a bit. Because I need you to understand how this situation even started in the first place. The white passenger, let's call him David, wasn't supposed to be in seat 2A at all. His original ticket was for economy. Row 32. Middle seat. But David had tried to upgrade at the gate. The kiosk told him no upgrades were available. So he did what a certain kind of person does when they don't get what they want. He walked onto the plane and sat wherever he wanted. 2A was empty when he boarded. He saw an opportunity. He took it. And he gambled that no one would challenge him. But because he'd done it before. On other flights. With other airlines. And it worked. People are conflict averse. Flight attendants want smooth operations. Most passengers won't make a scene. So David sat down, put his bag in the overhead bin and waited. When Lauren arrived minutes later, he didn't panic. He doubled down. Now, back to the moment when the supervisor scans the boarding pass. The system doesn't lie. It shows everything. Seat assignment, 2A. Ticket class, first. Payment status, completed. Passenger name, Lauren Thompson. Account type, corporate VIP. But here's where it gets worse. Because even with the proof right there on the screen, the initial flight attendant doesn't apologize. She doesn't immediately ask David to move. Instead, she hesitates. She looks at David. She looks at Lauren. And then she says the most telling thing of all. "Well, there must have been a system glitch. Let me call the gate agent." A system glitch. That's the excuse. Not, "I made a mistake." Not, "I'm sorry for doubting you." A system glitch. As if technology failed, not her judgment. David, sensing the shift, tries a different tactic. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but I paid for an upgrade. They told me at the gate this seat was available." The supervisor turns to him. "Sir, can I see your boarding pass?" David hands it over. The supervisor scans it. And there it is, seat 32B. Economy. No upgrade. No change. Just a man sitting where he was never supposed to be. But even now, even with both boarding passes scanned, even with the truth undeniable, the staff doesn't act decisively. Because removing a white man from a seat he stole is apparently harder than removing a young black woman from a seat she paid for. The supervisor clears her throat. "Sir, it looks like there's been some confusion. This seat is actually assigned to this young lady. We're going to need you to return to your ticketed seat." David's face flushes. "That's ridiculous. I've been sitting here for 10 minutes. You're really going to make me move because of some kid? Some kid. Not a paying passenger. Not the rightful seat holder. Some kid." Lauren is still standing in the aisle. She hasn't said a word in minutes. She's just watching this play out, and you can see it on her face. The realization that even when she's right, even when she has proof, she still has to fight for basic respect. The supervisor tries to smooth things over. "Sir, I apologize for the inconvenience, but we need to honor the original seat assignment." "This is insane," David mutters, but he stands up. Slowly, making a show of it. He grabs his bag from the overhead bin with exaggerated frustration, and as he passes Lauren, he says under his breath, "Hope you're happy." She doesn't respond. She just takes her seat. Finally. 7 minutes after she should have. But the damage is done. Every passenger in that cabin watched a young woman be humiliated, doubted, and dismissed. They watched her produce proof and still be questioned. They watched staff prioritize a man's comfort over a woman's rights. And most of them? They did nothing. Lauren sits down and puts her seatbelt on. Her hands are shaking. The flight attendant who started this mess walks by without making eye contact. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just silence. But Lauren is smart. And she's been raised by people who understand power, leverage, and documentation. So while the plane taxis to the runway, she does 3 things. First, she reviews the video she recorded. It's all there. The dismissal. The accusations. The threats. The humiliation. Second, she texts her parents. They're on a different flight, delayed by weather. Her message is simple: "They tried to kick me out of my seat. I recorded everything." Third, she takes a screenshot of her boarding pass, her confirmation email, and the flight details. Then she drafts an email to the airline's corporate customer service line. She doesn't send it yet. She's waiting. The flight takes off. Lauren sits quietly in 2A, staring out the window. Around her, the cabin returns to its normal rhythm. Passengers sip champagne. Attendants serve warm nuts. The captain makes cheerful announcements about weather and flight time. And somewhere in that cabin, David is fuming in seat 32B. He's already typing an angry email to the airline about how he was mistreated and embarrassed in front of other passengers. He's planning to demand compensation, maybe even threaten legal action. He has no idea what's about to hit him. Because while David is composing his complaint, Lauren's parents land at their destination and read her text. Marcus Thompson is a man who built an empire on precision and accountability. When he sees that message, when he hears what happened to his daughter, he doesn't get loud. He doesn't get angry. He gets methodical. He calls the family's attorney. Then their PR team. Then the airline's executive customer service line, the one reserved for corporate accounts that generate millions in annual revenue. He explains the situation calmly. He mentions the video. He mentions the witnesses. He mentions the elite account status that was ignored. And then he says the magic words, "We're documenting everything. For legal review." On the other end of the line, someone's heart rate spikes. Because those words, legal review, mean one thing: lawsuit. And not just any lawsuit. A discrimination lawsuit. From a billionaire family with unlimited resources and documented evidence. Suddenly, this isn't just a customer service issue. This is a corporate crisis. The airline's executive team is alerted. The flight is still in the air. Lauren is still in her seat. But the clock is already ticking on the airline's response. Do they get ahead of this? Do they apologize? Do they investigate? Or do they try to minimize it and hope it goes away? They choose wrong. Instead of reaching out to the Thompson family immediately, instead of acknowledging the incident and offering a genuine resolution, the airline sends a standard templated response. We're sorry you had a negative experience. We take all feedback seriously and will review the matter internally. Marcus reads that email and makes a decision. This isn't getting swept under the rug. This isn't getting buried in corporate bureaucracy. If the airline won't take accountability, the public will hold them accountable. But he waits. Because timing matters. And the best time to release this story? Right after Lauren lands. When the incident is fresh. When the video is irrefutable. When there's no time for the airline to craft a narrative. The flight lands. Lauren walks off the plane. She's exhausted. Emotionally drained. But she's also something else, resolved. Because she knows her parents aren't going to let this go. And neither is she. David walks off too, probably still drafting his complaint, still convinced he's the victim. He has no idea his face was caught on video. He has no idea his name is about to be the most searched term on Twitter. And the flight crew? They debrief like it's any other flight. A minor incident. A seating dispute. Resolved without major delays. File the report and move on. Except this time, they can't move on. Because 3 hours after Lauren lands, the video goes live. This story is just getting started, and trust me, the next part is where the internet loses its mind. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. You won't want to miss what happens when this goes viral. Question for you. Do you think the airline staff should have handled this differently from the very beginning? Let me know in the comments. The video drops at 6:47 p.m. Eastern Time. It's posted to Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube simultaneously. The caption is short. No outrage. No inflammatory language. Just facts. 18-year-old woman removed from her paid first-class seat because staff didn't believe she belonged there. Full video. You decide. The video itself is 2 minutes and 18 seconds. It starts with Lauren standing in the aisle, holding her boarding pass, politely explaining that she's in the right seat. It shows David dismissing her. It shows the flight attendant questioning her immediately, not him. It shows the threats to call security. It shows other passengers watching in silence. And it ends with the supervisor finally scanning the boarding pass and confirming what Lauren had been saying all along. She was right. Within the first hour, the video has 50,000 views. Within 2 hours, 500,000. By midnight, it's past 10 million. And the comments? They're unanimous. Furious. Unforgiving. This is what systemic racism looks like. They saw a black woman and assumed she stole the ticket. That flight attendant needs to be fired immediately. The other passengers just sat there and watched. Disgusting. I'm never flying this airline again. The algorithm picks it up. It's trending. Number 1 on Twitter. Number 3 on TikTok. News outlets start covering it. The story spreads to Facebook, Reddit, Instagram Reels. Everyone is talking about it. Everyone has an opinion. And then, someone identifies David. It takes less than 6 hours. Internet sleuths match his face to his LinkedIn profile. His full name, his job title, his employer, it's all out there. His company's social media accounts are flooded with comments demanding his termination. His personal accounts are set to private, but screenshots of old posts start circulating. Posts where he complains about political correctness and people playing the race card. The internet is relentless. David becomes the face of entitlement, of privilege, of everyday racism. Memes are made. Parody accounts are created. His name becomes shorthand for audacity. But David isn't the only one under fire. The flight attendants are identified too. Their names, their social media, their employment history. People dig into their past posts, looking for patterns. And they find some questionable comments. Insensitive jokes. Nothing overtly racist, but enough to paint a picture. The airline, let's call them Sky Elite Airways, is in full crisis mode. Their social media accounts are flooded with angry comments. Thousands of people are posting videos of themselves cutting up their loyalty cards. The hashtag boycott Sky Elite is trending in 12 countries. Their stock price drops 4% in after-hours trading. And then the mainstream media picks it up. CNN runs a segment. MSNBC brings on a civil rights attorney to break down the legal implications. Fox News, surprisingly, doesn't defend the airline. Even they can see the optics are indefensible. The video is too clear. The bias is too obvious. By the next morning, Sky Elite's CEO is forced to make a statement. He appears in a hastily arranged press conference, looking tired and rattled. He reads from a prepared script. "We are aware of the incident involving a young passenger on Flight 447. We take these matters extremely seriously and are conducting a full investigation. The employees involved have been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. We are committed to diversity, inclusion, and treating all passengers with respect." It's a corporate apology. Polished, carefully worded, designed to sound empathetic without admitting liability. But the public isn't buying it. The comments under the video of his statement are savage. Administrative leave? They should be fired. "We take these matters seriously" equals "we got caught." Where was this commitment to respect when they were humiliating a young woman? The pressure intensifies. Civil rights organizations issue statements. The NAACP calls for a federal investigation. Jesse Jackson tweets about it. Al Sharpton mentions it on his radio show. Politicians start weighing in. A senator from California demands answers. A congresswoman from New York calls for congressional hearings on discrimination in the airline industry. Sky Elite tries to control the narrative, but they're drowning. Every statement they release is picked apart. Every attempt to move on is met with more outrage. And then, the worst possible thing happens for them. More stories come out. Other passengers, black passengers, start sharing their own experiences with Sky Elite. A woman tweets about being asked to prove she could afford business class. A man shares a story about being accused of theft because he was sitting in first class. A young professional recounts being pulled aside for random, additional screening 5 flights in a row. The pattern is undeniable. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was a culture. The Department of Transportation announces an investigation into Sky Elite's practices. The FAA opens a review of their training protocols. Lawyers start filing lawsuits on behalf of other passengers. Lauren's case isn't just one story anymore. It's the catalyst that exposes an entire system. And through all of this, Lauren and her family stay relatively quiet. They release one statement through their attorney. "Our daughter was humiliated and discriminated against because of the color of her skin. She did everything right. She had her boarding pass, she was polite, she followed the rules, and she was still treated like a criminal. No young woman should ever experience what she experienced. We are exploring all legal options and will ensure that this leads to real, systemic change." It's measured, it's powerful, and it shifts the conversation from outrage to accountability. Sky Elite's stock continues to fall. Advertisers start pulling campaigns. Corporate partners begin reviewing their relationships with the airline. Pilots and flight attendants, the ones who aren't involved in the incident, start speaking out anonymously about the toxic culture within the company. Union reps distance themselves from the employees involved. 10 days after the video drops, Sky Elite makes their big move. Another press conference. This time, the CEO announces sweeping changes. All employees involved in the incident are terminated, not just suspended. A new diversity and inclusion training program will be mandatory for all staff. An independent audit of company practices will be conducted. A compensation fund is being established for passengers who experience discrimination. And this is the big one. They're offering the Thompson family an undisclosed settlement. The number leaks anyway. $20 million. Not as a payout, but as a donation to a foundation the Thompson family will establish focused on combating discrimination in travel and hospitality. The internet debates whether it's enough. Some say it's a start. Others say it's a PR stunt. But one thing is clear. The airline was forced to act. And they acted because of public pressure, because of video evidence, and because they underestimated an 18-year-old woman. David, meanwhile, has disappeared from public life. His employer released a statement saying he no longer works for the company. His social media is deleted. There are rumors he's trying to change his name, move to another state, start over. But the internet doesn't forget. His face, his actions, they're part of the permanent record now. The flight attendants who were fired try to fight their terminations. They claim they were just following protocol. Their union initially defends them, then quietly backs away when internal emails are leaked showing they'd been warned about implicit bias in the past. No airline will hire them. Their careers are over. And Lauren? She goes back to her life. She tries to return to normal. But normal is different now. She's recognized. People point. Some sympathize. Some are weird about it. She becomes the face of something she never asked to represent. Her parents hire security. They move to a more private residence. They provide her with additional support just to give her space. Flying, the thing she used to do so easily, becomes a source of anxiety. Every time she boards a plane, she feels eyes on her. She wonders if people recognize her. She wonders if the staff are treating her well because of who she is or because they're afraid of another viral moment. Her parents watch their confident, independent daughter become more withdrawn, more cautious, more aware of how the world sees her. And it breaks their hearts. Because here's the truth that no apology, no settlement, no corporate policy change can fix. Lauren learned that day that her humanity is conditional, that her worth is questioned, that no matter how right she is, no matter how much proof she has, there will always be people who see her skin color first and her personhood second. That's the real cost. Not the millions the airline lost. Not the jobs that were terminated. Not the reputation damage. The real cost is what was taken from an 18-year-old woman who just wanted to sit in the seat she paid for. If this story is hitting you in the gut, please subscribe. We're not done yet. There's still one more act that'll make you rethink everything. And here's my question. Do you think the public outrage and the consequences were proportional to what happened? Or did it go too far? Let's discuss in the comments. 6 months later, the story has faded from the headlines. The news cycle moved on. The hashtags stopped trending. Sky Elite stock rebounded, not fully, but enough. They ran a massive ad campaign highlighting their new commitment to inclusion. They hired a chief diversity officer. They published their audit results, promised reforms, and slowly, carefully, started rebuilding their brand. But the damage runs deeper than quarterly earnings and PR crises. Let me walk you through what actually happened in the aftermath, the parts that didn't make the news. First, the employees who were terminated. The senior flight attendant's name was Patricia. She was 53 years old. She'd worked for Sky Elite for 27 years. She had a near-perfect service record, until that day. After her termination, she applied to 6 other airlines. All 6 rejected her. She tried to get a job in hospitality. Hotels wouldn't touch her. She ended up working retail, making a fraction of her former salary. Her marriage fell apart under the financial strain. She lost her house. Does she deserve sympathy? That's not for me to decide. But I'm telling you what happened because consequences ripple. They don't just stop at person gets fired. The younger flight attendant who initially questioned Lauren was named Jenna. She was 28. This was her first major incident. She claimed she was following Patricia's lead, that she was trained to defer to senior staff in disputes. None of that mattered. Her name is permanently linked to the video. Google her name, and that's what comes up. She moved to another state. Changed careers entirely. Works in administrative support now. She told a reporter, off the record, that she thinks about that moment every single day. That if she could go back, she'd scan the boarding pass first. Ask questions later. David fared worse. His face became a meme. His name became synonymous with entitled racism. He tried to rebuild under a different name, but people found out. He lost 3 jobs in 5 months. He filed for bankruptcy. His family cut ties with him, not because of what he did, but because of the harassment they received by association. He attempted a public apology video 8 months later. It was ratioed into oblivion, deleted within hours. Again, I'm not here to judge whether these consequences fit the actions. I'm here to show you what happens when one moment, one decision, one bias goes viral. Now let's talk about the airline itself. Sky Elite spent an estimated $68 million in the aftermath. That includes the settlement, the audit, the training programs, the advertising, the legal fees, and the lost revenue from canceled bookings. They laid off 400 employees, none of them involved in the incident, because the financial hit was too severe. Those employees had nothing to do with what happened to Lauren, but they paid for it anyway. The company implemented new policies. Every boarding pass must now be scanned before any seating dispute is escalated. Staff must document every step of a passenger conflict in real time. There are new bias training modules, quarterly reviews, anonymous reporting systems. Some of these changes are genuine. Some are performative. But they exist because of what happened on Flight 447. Other airlines took note. Industry-wide, there was a shift. Memos went out. Training was updated. Everyone in aviation knew the story. Knew what happened when assumptions replaced verification. It became a case study in business schools, in HR seminars, in legal training programs. But while the systems were being reformed, Lauren was dealing with her own aftermath. She developed anxiety. Not just about flying, about being perceived, about being judged, about taking up space. Her parents enrolled her in therapy. She worked through it, slowly, but the confidence she had before that flight? It never fully came back. She stopped flying alone. Even when her parents offered, even when she was 19, 20, 21 years old, she couldn't do it. The independence she'd been so proud of felt dangerous now. Because she learned that being right doesn't always protect you. That having proof doesn't guarantee respect. That sometimes, the world decides who you are before you even open your mouth. Her parents wrestled with guilt. They'd raised her to be self-sufficient, to trust systems, to believe that fairness existed if you just followed the rules. And then she followed the rules, and the rules failed her. What do you say to your daughter after that? How do you promise her the world is just when she's seen evidence to the contrary? The foundation they established, the one funded by the settlement, has done remarkable work. They've trained over 15,000 hospitality workers on implicit bias. They've funded legal aid for passengers who experience discrimination but can't afford to fight back. They've partnered with civil rights organizations to push for policy changes at the federal level. But Lauren rarely participates in the Foundation's public events. She gave one speech, at her parents' request, 2 years after the incident. She talked about what happened. She talked about how it felt. And then she said something that made the entire room go silent. I don't want to be the woman from the video anymore. I don't want to be a symbol or a headline. I want to be a person. And the hardest part of all of this is that the thing that happened to me, the thing that went viral, that changed policies, that cost an airline millions, that thing happens to people every single day. It happens to black women on planes, in stores, in banks. It happens to black men pulled over for no reason. It happens to black young people followed around by security. The only difference is that my family had the resources to make people pay attention. But what about everyone else? What about all the people who experience this and don't have a video, don't have a platform, don't have a billionaire parent? They're still being dismissed. Still being doubted. Still being told they don't belong. She paused, and you could hear people in the audience crying. That's what keeps me up at night. Not what happened to me, but what's still happening to everyone else. After that speech, she stepped back from the public eye entirely. She finished her first years of college. Got accepted to study at prestigious institutions. She chose one where she could study sociology and law. She wants to understand systems, why they fail, how they can be fixed, who they protect, and who they harm. She doesn't talk about the incident much anymore. When people recognize her, and some do, she deflects. Changes the subject. She's not ashamed of what happened. She's just tired of being defined by it. Her parents respect that. They continue the Foundation's work. They push for change. But they also grieve what their daughter lost that day. Not physically, but psychologically. The innocence. The belief that the world would see her for who she is, not what she looks like. Marcus Thompson gave one interview about the incident a year afterward. He was asked if he thought the public response was too harsh, if people's lives being destroyed was justice. His answer was measured. My daughter did everything right, and she was still humiliated. She's a young woman. And no amount of public outrage, no settlement, No policy change will undo the fear she felt standing in that aisle, being told she didn't belong in the seat we paid for. So when people ask if the consequences were too severe, I ask them this: what is the appropriate consequence for teaching a young person that her humanity is negotiable? That her word is worthless? That her presence is suspicious? Because that's what happened. And if it takes someone losing their job, someone's reputation being ruined, a company losing millions, if that's what it takes for the next black woman to be believed when she shows her boarding pass, then no, I don't think the consequences were too severe. I think they were necessary. The interviewer followed up, "Do you think things have really changed?" Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Ask me that question when my daughter can board a plane without her heart racing. Ask me when she can sit in first class without wondering if someone's going to question whether she belongs there. Ask me when she can exist in a space without being hyper-aware of how she's being perceived. When that day comes, I'll tell you if things have changed. That day hasn't come yet. Now, I want to be clear about something. This story isn't about canceling people. It's not about ruining lives for one mistake. It's about accountability. It's about what happens when biases, conscious or unconscious, are allowed to dictate how people are treated. And it's about the fact that for every viral video, for every story that gets attention, there are thousands of incidents that don't. Lauren's story mattered because it was documented, because her family had resources, because the internet amplified it. But think about all the times this happens and there's no video, no platform, no recourse. Think about every black passenger who's been doubted, every person of color who's been followed in a store, every individual who's been treated as suspicious simply because of how they look. Those stories don't go viral. Those people don't get settlements. They just live with it. They adjust. They code switch. They carry the weight of constantly proving they belong in spaces they have every right to occupy. That's the real lesson of this story. Not that one airline got held accountable. Not that one young woman got justice. But that justice shouldn't require a viral moment. Respect shouldn't require proof of wealth. Humanity shouldn't require documentation. It should be the default. So where does that leave us? Sky Elite is still operating. They're profitable again. Their ads talk about a new era of travel. They've moved on. Patricia, Jenna, and David are living with the consequences of their actions. Whether those consequences are fair or excessive depends on who you ask. And Lauren? She's living her life. She's healing. She's advocating. She's trying to make sure what happened to her leads to something meaningful. But she'll never forget that moment. Standing in the aisle, holding her boarding pass, being told she didn't belong. And honestly, neither should we. Because the moment we forget, the moment we move on, the moment we stop being outraged by injustice, that's when it becomes normal again. That's when the next Patricia, the next David, the next complicit passenger feels comfortable making the same assumptions. This story didn't end with a settlement or a press release. It ended with a question: what are we going to do differently? How are we going to check our own biases? How are we going to speak up when we see someone being treated unfairly? Because Lauren did everything right. She had her documentation. She stayed calm. She followed the rules. And it still wasn't enough. The system failed her. People failed her. And the only reason she got any justice at all was because she had resources most people don't have. That's not acceptable. That's not how any of this should work.